Chapter 962. Central Room 46 was the organization with the highest authority in Soul Society. Even the Godii 13 had to obey their orders. No one could go against their will. This guy. Could it be that he's already taken out Central Room 46 and is using his mirror's image ability to confuse the captains? Seeing Aizen so confident, Dustless guessed. Then he said to himself, unfortunately, it's useless. No matter how hard you try, it's futile. That old man Balegan will die. Dustless didn't care. He was determined to kill Balegan, and there was no way he was going to let him go. He turned his head and avoided everyone's gaze, and his eyes began to change. His left eye was purple, and there were 9 mysterious tomo in it. It was Rinnegan. Will Grave, Border Prison. In the invisible world, a shadow that looked exactly like Dustless walked out and walked in front of Balegan. No one could detect his presence. In order to ensure that everything went smoothly and he could kill Balegan without leaving a single trace behind, the shadow still held a pitch-black iron rod in his hand. It was condensed from the yin-yang escape. In that case, we will let Central Room 46 make the decision. Yamamoto waved his hand. Hearing this, Aizen bowed and thanked Yamamoto. He then asked Byakuya, Captain Byakuya, what do you think? Let them decide. Byakuya's answer was always so simple. Unohana Retsu looked at Aizen and had no choice but to agree. All the captains agreed, even if she disagreed, it would be useless. However, from today onwards, Aizen gave Unohana a new understanding of him. Unohana Retsu didn't know how to describe it, but it was completely different from before. When she saw Aizen, she couldn't help but be on guard. That's good. Aizen sighed in relief. Just as he was about to think about the next step of his plan, a shadow that he didn't want to see came out to disgust him. I have an opinion. Dustless said calmly. The 4 simple words attracted everyone's attention. East Senpai's expression suddenly became cold, and the Zanpakuto in his hand was unsheathed. He knew that Dustless did it on purpose. You intend to question the credibility of Central Room 46? Keiki Baya opened his eyes and asked in an unfriendly manner. As a noble, he was rather stubborn. That's not it. Hearing this, Dustless shook his head and immediately said, after Balegang imprisoned Soul Society, what should he do? A grand void like Vasto Lord is not easy to deal with. We can't just send 2 or 3 captains around him all the time, can we? I thought it would be a big deal. When the time comes, I'll just develop a tool to restrict him. Mayuri shrugged and said casually. Not bad. Aizen agreed and immediately volunteered, although my strength is weak, with Captain Ye's tool, Balegan's strength will be greatly reduced. For the sake of Soul Society, I am willing to guard him. Aizen's words flattered Mayuri without leaving a trace. He also put himself on the moral high ground. He deserved the title of Best Actor. However, what happened next made Sosuke Aizen dumbfounded. Not only him, but all the captains were stunned. Bastard, what did you do to me? Come and save me. Balegan screamed when he noticed the abnormality in his body. At this moment, his body was strangely collapsing. His skeleton turned into fragments and slowly fell to the ground. Immediately, under everyone's astonished gaze, the peeled bones disappeared with the wind. His body inexplicably collapsed. He didn't receive any attack, but he turned into ashes. Don't get close to him. Old man Yamamoto's expression turned cold as he instinctively felt a sense of danger. His gaze immediately swept past the captains and finally landed on Wuchin. This has nothing to do with me. You saw it too. He was fine just now. Wuchin had an indifferent and aloof appearance. He immediately drew a clear line between them. Then, he said sternly, the evils we bring upon ourselves are the hardest to bear. Beyligin offended too many people in his life and fought countless battles. Maybe his hidden disease suddenly broke out and killed him. Although this reason was a bit far-fetched, it happened from time to time. This is impossible. Aizen finally couldn't maintain his smile. He looked at Beyligин's body that was gradually disappearing. He almost vomited blood. Such an important chess piece died so inexplicably. How could he be calm? Aizen's face was pale. He had fought with Beyligin before and knew his physical condition. He had never heard of a great void expert dying from a hidden disease. This kind of death was too ridiculous. This is outrageous. Dustless suddenly gritted his teeth. Captain Aizen just said he would guard Beyligin, but he suddenly died. God didn't give him face. This is his own sin. Beyligin has killed too many Grim Reapers. This is the right ending. He's completely caught in his own trap. Aizen immediately forced a smile and replied. His heart was twitching. He was smart. Of course, he knew Dustless's words were a disguised sarcasm. It was useless to mock him. He was rubbing salt on his scars. Chapter 963. The head captain was expressionless. In fact, Beyligин's death was in line with his wishes. The Grim Reaper was the Grim Reaper, and the Void was the Void. There was no need to do something as trivial as imprisoning Bailey. This matter ends here. Don't discuss it in the future. The head captain's tone was firm, and there was no room for disobedience. Aizen could only grit his teeth and nod. Without Beyligин's deterrence, Hueco Mundo would soon fall into a bloodbath. Aizen glanced at Dustless and then looked away. This grudge had been settled. Dustless, who had been observing Aizen's expression the whole time, noticed it. He just smiled, it was inevitable. Anyway, he didn't care. The invasion this time is over. Raising his eyebrows, Old Man Yamamoto's eyes flashed with murderous intent as he looked at the messy Soul Society. He suddenly felt that it was a pity to let Beyligin die without beating him up. Within half a month, all the teams must resume normal operations. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The efficiency of Soul Society was extremely high. Although it was said to take half a month, under the circumstances of full mobilization, Soul Society only needed a few days to walk out of the shadow of Hueco Mundo's attack and recover to its current state. This sudden war, if one were to talk about who benefited the most, it was none other than Dustless. He gained both fame and fortune, and his captain-level strength was also confirmed. Even Wuchen could sense that the members of the 2nd Division who usually monitored him had also disappeared. No matter what, Old Man Yamamoto reluctantly trusted Dustless. In the 4th Division's quarters. In front of the mirror, Dustless was wearing a brand new outfit. He twisted his waist in discomfort, feeling a little awkward. He was not used to wearing the Grim Reaper's Death Tyrant outfit. Clothes make the man, and gold make the Buddha. Although Wuchen felt a little restrained, he was indeed a little different from the past when he wore the Death Tyrant suit. His delicate and bright eyes were bright and full of spirit. Accompanied by the dark Death Tyrant suit, he looked funny and gave people a feeling of extra vigor. Not bad, Unohana commented after observing for a while. Just not bad. Shudora Thousandhand Maru glanced at Unohana Retsu and did not hide his dissatisfaction. I spent 10 hours to make this. TSK, hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but curl his lips. Making the Death Tyrant outfit in 10 hours was definitely a rough product without any skill. You brat, don't be so unappreciative. Even if other people ask me to act like a dead tyrant, I still have to think about it. Shidoro stomped his feet in annoyance as he glared at Dustless in annoyance. By the way, Lai, have you noticed it recently? She changed the topic of conversation and frowned. She didn't want to banter with Dustless, so she spoke cautiously. Uno Hua Lai's expression also became abnormally solemn. The street of drifting souls has indeed encountered some problems recently. Many souls have disappeared. Many of the death gods in Quiet Soul Society have also mysteriously disappeared. Hearing this, Dustless remained expressionless, as if nothing had happened, but his heart was as clear as a mirror. They were probably captured by Aizen to make the Hogyoku. Thinking about the mysterious existence of the Hogyoku, Dustless's heart was burning with passion. His heart that had been sealed for so many years actually had a rare desire for it. The Hogyoku, at the very beginning, was actually used to break the boundary between Hollow and Shinigami, and to evolve a whole new dimension. Actually, the Hogyoku's true power was to develop the person's heart according to their wishes, but the condition was that the person had to have the strength to make that wish come true. In simpler words, it was a heaven-defying existence that could make anything happen. That kind of thing is not something that ordinary people like Aizen deserve. Only I can control it. With Dustless's current strength, if he fused with the Hogyoku, his strength would increase explosively, and he would break through the Shinigami's boundary. He would not be comparable to Aizen, who was in the late stage of Hogyoku. The stronger the host's mentality, the more the Hogyoku would evolve. Dustless's ideals and ambitions were far beyond Aizen's, so naturally, he would not stop at his level. Team Zero has already decided to investigate further. After a while, Shidoro Senjumaru said something shocking. The mysterious disappearance of souls was not a small matter, and it would cause imbalance. Back then, the Grim Reaper and Quincy fought because Quincy kept hunting Void. The Grim Reaper purified Void while the Grim Reaper killed Void. The Grim Reaper killed Void to purify Void while Void killed Void completely. As time passed, the two sides disagreed and a war broke out. I helped you this time as a reward for the Hogyoku in the future. Dustless smiled and explained to Unohana Retsu and Shidoro Senjumaru, the reason for the mysterious disappearance of souls is related to the invasion of Hueco Mundo. At that time, many souls were cruelly eaten by Jillian. Are you sure? Shidoro Senjumaru asked suspiciously. Again, what good would it do me to lie to you? Dustless stretched and continued, if you don't believe me, you can ask Yongin. She was also there at that time. The souls of Rughun Street and many Shinigami were either eaten or killed. Back then, many Grim Reapers had witnessed this scene with their own eyes. Dustless naturally had nothing to fear. Chapter 964. When Dustless, Kazuto, and the others arrived at the 80th district of Drifting Soul Street, they happened to see a large group of Jillian hunting souls. Many Shinigami saw this scene. They just needed to ask around a little. Shuro Senjumaru's face that was as bright as jade was filled with suspicion. His gentle gaze instantly became incomparably awe-inspiring. He stared at Wu Chen without blinking. After a long while, he saw that Wu Chen's expression was natural and didn't seem to be lying. His sharp gaze then calmed down. I hope you're not lying. Dustless said with certainty, of course I'm not lying. You guys know that the Hollow favors the souls of Shinigami. Why would they need to lie about this? That's true. Shuro Thousandhand Maru and Unohana Retsu could not deny that. The Shinigami had always been a delicacy for the Hollow. Most of the time, they would be eaten. The soul of the Shinigami was a great tonic for the Hollow. Unohana Retsu and Shuro Thousandhand Maru were quite familiar with each other. The two of them chatted happily for a while. They even ignored Dustless who was beside them. That's right. I almost forgot something important. Shuro Thousandhand Maru suddenly remembered the important matter of coming to Soul Society this time. Her strange gaze fell on Dustless again. Something. Dustless, who was drinking tea alone, noticed Shuro Thousandhand Maru's strange behavior and asked curiously. He was also a little speechless at this woman who was so flustered. It's more than just something. You can seriously injure Bailey. Soul Society will have a hard time ignoring you in the future. Shoutoro Senjumaru liked to be straightforward, so he was too lazy to talk nonsense. His eyes flashed non-stop, and after pondering for a moment, he said, "Let me introduce myself first. I am from Squad 0. I know you're called Shuro Thousand-Hand Maru. Get to the point." Dustless waved his hand. He did not expect Shuro Thousand-Hand Maru to introduce herself. He began to guess her motive. Could it be, they want to pull me into Squad 0? Following that, Shidoro's words confirmed Dustless's conjecture. Squad 0 is responsible for guarding the Spirit King Palace and ensuring the safety of the Spirit King. They will only appear when there is a great calamity in Soul Society. I came here with another order, and that is to invite you to join Squad 0. Staring straight into Dustless's eyes, Shidoro Senjumaru spoke bluntly. Puchi. Her stomach churned violently, and the tea that had poured into her lungs directly sprayed out. If it wasn't for the Shidoro Thousand-Hand Pill's agility, it might have even hit her face. What do you mean? Shidoro Thousand-Hands Maru asked as he pursed his thin lips and revealed a soul-stirring smile. The only difference was that when the beauty smiled, what blossomed was a burst of chilling laughter. Sorry, I'm not interested in joining the Zero Squad. Dustless smiled embarrassedly and immediately refused. He was used to being free. If he suddenly ran to a sealed space and lived a life worse than death, he would be looking for trouble. You just want to use my strength to protect the Spirit King. Dustless was as clear as a mirror. He clearly remembered that the former captain of the 11th Division, Kenpachi Kiyuya, was once invited by Squad 0. The reason was that he had defeated Vasto Lord like Dustless, and thus his strength was recognized by Squad 0. However, Kenpachi Kiyuya rejected Squad 0. Just like Dustless today, joining Squad 0 meant that he would completely lose his freedom. You don't want to reconsider? Shidoro Thousand-Hands Maru's dark and deep eyebrows squeezed together. His words were filled with persuasion and temptation. Squad 0's conditions are much better than Soul Society. Era. You are trying to trick my vice-captain. Senjumaru, Squad 0 is no exception to this. Uno Hanaretsu came out to disrupt the situation. Dustless was speechless. He was not a child, how could he be tricked? Compared to the boring Zero Squad, I still prefer Soul Society. Repeating himself, Dustless said with absolute certainty. His stance was incomparably firm. The existence of Squad 0 and related information is top secret. If you refuse, will you be silenced? Shidoro Thousand-Hands Maru smiled faintly, like a deadly poppy flower, brimming with murderous intent. At the same time, she released dense murderous intent and spiritual pressure that was far more terrifying than Vastolord's, indicating that she was not joking. If you can try. Facing the spiritual pressure of Mount Tai, his body felt as if there were a few mountains pressing down on him. However, Dustless's expression did not change. He even played with his fingers in boredom. He was extremely calm. You don't even know how to trick people. Dustless disagreed. The existence of Squad 0 was top secret? It was just a lie. In reality, most of the captains knew about Squad 0. Even Rukia knew about the royal family spy. In reality, even if they knew about the existence of the Spirit King Palace and Squad 0, there was nothing they could do. Spirit King Palace was not a place that could be entered as they wished. Other than being led by Squad 0, or learning from Aizen Sosuke's King's Key, there was no other way. Of course, they could learn from Yawatch. This kid is really troublesome. Shidoro Thousand-Hands Maru was having a headache. Dustless was someone who did not yield to force or persuasion. He was extremely difficult to deal with. Looking at his eyes that seemed to have everything under his control, she felt that he was even harder to deal with than Vastolord. Vastolord was also full of flaws. On the other hand, Dustless's strength was unfathomable. He was also cunning and full of tricks. Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru felt like she was being led by the nose by Dustless. However, she could not voice out her bitterness. After another half an hour, Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru left secretly. Dustless also followed Unohana Retsu to learn Shinigami's fighting style. Since he came to this world, he had to learn Shinigami's fighting style. Chapter 965. Time flew by quickly, and half a year had passed in the blink of an eye. For normal humans, half a year might be a long time, but death gods had no concept of time. Their lifespans were tens of times longer than humans, perhaps even longer. Two sharp explosions sounded from the spacious area. Looking over, the two black figures were Dustless and Unohana Retsu. At first, Dustless was very confused about spiritual pressure, but as Unohana Retsu explained it to him, he understood what it was. As long as the heart was still beating, there would be spiritual pressure overflowing. In reality, it was like chakra, but it was even simpler than chakra, as there was no need for hand seals. Path of Destruction 33, Fall of Blue Flames. After the spiritual pressure in his body gathered, the boundless explosive flames left his hand and blasted towards the figure in front of him, and the person who activated Path of Destruction 33 was Dustless. Because he was a ten-tailed beast, Dustless' stats in almost every aspect were top-notch, including the soul, which he was not good at. As such, the moment he released his spiritual pressure was no weaker than a captain's spiritual pressure, and it might even surpass it. Now that half a year had passed, Dustless was able to control his spiritual pressure with ease. Path of Destruction 54, Waste Flames. With a delicate shout, a pink disk of flames shot out. It was like a blade that emitted a blazing cold light. It effortlessly sliced apart the explosive flame that was attacking them. Not only that, it also rushed towards Dustless. Seeing this, Dustless's gaze froze, and a scorching light condensed in his palm. Crackling sounds could be heard, followed by an explosion of light that pierced through the air. Path of Destruction 63, Thunder Roar Cannon. The two contrasting lights inevitably came into close contact with each other. Immediately, an imposing and dazzling light burst out, and the temperature increased by a few times in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. The situation was almost completely one-sided. The rioting teardrops easily tore apart the shattered halos and did not slow down in the slightest. Instead, they continued to rampage towards Unohana. What a monster! Unohua sighed with mixed feelings after sensing how extraordinary Tao Breaker number 63 was. Her tone was somewhat sour, as if she was jealous of Wu Chen's boundless spiritual pressure. Even if an ordinary Tao Breaker of the lowest level was injected with a large amount of spiritual pressure, its power would still increase by a whole new dimension. This was the case for Wu Chen. Unohua Lai did not have much spiritual pressure, at least not as much as Dustless, so she focused more on the way of the sword. Clang! 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 Her slender fingers gripped the hilt of the sword. The moment she pulled out the sword, it was filled with an indescribable aura. It was a visual impact of turning something rotten into something magical. Unohua Lai's gentle gaze instantly turned cold. Puchi! The cold light was so weak that it was almost negligible. It was extremely fragile, as if it could be extinguished with a flick of a finger. However, in Unohana's hands, it immediately performed a miracle, shattering the incoming lightning and splitting it in half, allowing it to pass by her side. The first generation, Sword 8, is indeed not for show. Wu Chen's eyes lit up. He had never seen anyone who could compare with Unohua Lai's swordsmanship. Her swordsmanship had almost reached the pinnacle of perfection. Hell Butterfly. Did something big happen in Soul Society again? The black butterfly suddenly landed on his shoulder, and the surging chakra in Dustless's body also calmed down. It was not just him, Unohua Lai also had the same butterfly on her shoulder. Dustless took a deep breath. He knew that today's short training session would end here. His eyes lit up. Although he did not know what was going on, he could tell that something was not right. Normally, the captains would attend the meetings. However, this time, Dustless had used the hell butterfly to inform him. This meant that the scale of the meeting had obviously increased, which also meant that the situation was different from before. Otherwise, Head Captain Yamamoto would not have called them, the vice captains. Soul Society's captain meetings were usually held by the head captain's team, and this time was no exception. Old man Yamamoto sat calmly in his seat. The 2 rows of captains did not dare to make a sound or show any dissatisfaction. The man in front of them was the founder of Soul Society. Without him, there would be no Soul Society, no Shinigami, and no quiet Soul Society. The blue sky of Soul Society was created by him alone. It was easy to imagine how high his prestige was. This is the latest order from the Central Room 46. Head Captain Yamamoto glanced at his vice captain, Sparrow Division. The latter then took out a thick stack of documents and handed them to all the captains and vice captains. "Thank you, Vice Captain of Sparrow Division." Dustless took the documents filled with words and thanked him. Glancing at the contents, Dustless sneered in his heart. An order from the Central Room 46. I think it's more like an order from Aizen Sosuke. After glancing at Aizen and his loyal dog, Dustless calmed down and began to read the documents. The content made him a little sluggish. What does this mean? Even if there's trouble in creating the Hogyoku, there's no need to make such a big fuss. Frowning, Dustless's eyes flickered. He stared at Aizen and began to think about his intentions. He instinctively smelled a conspiracy. Chapter 966. The contents of the document were rather cumbersome. The first part was mostly nonsense. The content was the same, praising the Godei 13th's loyalty to Soul Society. The real order was only a few words at the end. Capture the captains who once betrayed Soul Society and wandered the modern world. Capture them alive. Has this guy already lost his mind to this extent? Does he plan to capture them and take them back to Soul Society for experiments? This was the only reason Dustless could think of. Aizen, the smiling tiger, would definitely do something like live experiments. In addition, the creation of Hogyoku required a Shinigami's soul. The higher the level, the better. A captain-level Shinigami's soul was perfect. Ordinary Shinigami would be swallowed by Hogyoku's power and lose their sense of self. Is the information reliable? Didn't the previous captains all die? Jin pretended to be surprised. Dustless rolled his eyes. He was there when Aizen tried to kill the former captains. Now he was acting like he didn't know anything. How shameless. Captain Jin is right. I didn't expect Captain Hirako to still be alive. I owe him a lot. Unfortunately, he went astray. Aizen said sadly. Keep pretending. Dustless was speechless. Aizen's eyes were shining, and he looked like he was about to cry. Suddenly, he felt that he had been too incompetent when it came to scheming. He couldn't be as good as Aizen, and he almost burst into tears. No matter what, since the Central 46 sent Soul Society to capture them, we have no reason to let them go. After all, they have a lot to do with Hueco Mundo. Maybe they were the ones who ordered Bailey to invade Soul Society. Leaning on his crutch, he knocked on the ground. The captains tactfully shut their mouths. Yamamoto Genryu Mashiguko resolutely said, "We must capture them and bring them to justice." Due to Aizen's framing, Hirako Masako and the others were deemed to be closely related to Hueco Mundo and became wanted criminals of Soul Society. However, thanks to Urahara Kasuke's assistance, they were able to successfully escape from Soul Society. Those guys are strong. There are several captains and many former vice captains. We need to be careful. Otherwise, we might fail. I don't understand. Even if they are alive, they should be very low-key. Why do we have to poke a hornet's nest? Did those guys in Central Room 46 think that we're too comfortable, so they deliberately gave us some work to do? Jingle Chenshui, who was lazy by nature, ridiculed. Regarding this kind of boring, unrewarding, and very dangerous mission, he was 100 times unwilling. However, the biggest reason was that among the so-called traitors who colluded with Hueco Mundo, there were his close friends and confidants who could barely be considered his confidant. Let nature take its course. Wu Qin was calmly cultivating his mind and temperament. He was silent. Aizen was the one who planned all of this. His goal was to capture these Shinigami who were supposed to be dead, but were still alive and could control the void form. After capturing them and bringing them back to Soul Society, they wouldn't be sentenced. Instead, they would be treated as guinea pigs by Aizen. We do need to make reasonable preparations. If they are alive, they are indeed a great enemy. Yamamoto's two white eyebrows were almost squeezed together. His tone was solemn. This mission will be led by Captain Yasushi, Captain Ikamaru, Captain Jin, Captain Shunsui, and old man Yamamoto looked around and finally fixed his eyes on Dustless. He remembered how Dustless had defeated the king of Hueco Mundo, Balegan, half a year ago. A strange light flashed in his turbid eyes. Vice Captain Dustless, you should go this time too. No problem. Dustless was startled at first, but then he agreed without hesitation. The Hogyoku would be his in the end anyway. Helping Aizen was the same as helping himself. The peace of Soul Society needs you young people. Dustless's straightforwardness was beyond Yamamoto's expectation. He immediately smiled. Compared to Shunsui, who only complained and didn't do anything, Dustless was more pleasing to the eye. It's strange. How did Aizen know that they are still alive and in the modern world? It doesn't make sense. Dustless's heart was filled with doubts. Back then, Urahara Kasuke had secretly rescued Hirako Masako and the others and escaped to the modern world. Other than Dustless, who was an invader who had transmigrated, perhaps no one else knew about it. For decades, the Masked Legion had been hiding quietly. But now, Aizen suddenly ordered the Godei 13 to exterminate the Masked Legion. The source of this information had to be questioned. Forget it, let's take one step at a time. Dustless couldn't find any clues after thinking for a long time. There were too many unsolved mysteries in the world. There was no need to dwell on it. It's not like I didn't get anything this time. That unlucky bastard Yenqing is also in this mission. I'll find a chance to kill him and become the captain of the 11th Division, Wu Qin planned in his heart. He looked at Yen Ghost Yenqing and happened to see Yen Ghost Yenqing gnashing his teeth. He looked like he was going to swallow Wu Qin alive. Chen-kun, be careful in this mission. The enemy is strong, but you have to be careful of your own people. Unohua moved closer to Wu Qin. Her delicate red lips exuded a fragrance, reminding Wu Qin to be wary of her own people. Thank you, Captain Unohana. I will be careful. Dustless smiled and thanked her sincerely. Even though Unohana Retsu's worries were unnecessary, Dustless still accepted them all. After all, the only person in Soul Society who cared about Dustless was Unohana Retsu. Chapter 967. Unohana Retsu didn't even need to think about the person she was talking about. The only person who fit the criteria was the captain of the 11th Division, Kenpachi Ghost Yenqing. The hatred between Dustless and him was the type that couldn't be resolved. Kenpachi Ghost Yenqing is a narrow-minded man. He won't let you go if he finds an opportunity. What Unohua Lai said was not false. She had a keen eye for people. With just a single glance, she could tell what kind of person they were. Kenpachi Ghost Yenqing wasn't a kind person. He had a ferocious appearance and a cunning heart. There's no such thing as an absolute hunter and prey. This kind of situation is always changing. If you don't pay attention, you'll become someone else's meal. Dushless said casually. I hope so. Unohana Retsu looked deeply at Dushless and didn't say anything else. She was smart enough to understand what Dushless meant. If he encountered Kenpachi Ghost Yenshin, Dustless wouldn't show any mercy. Okay, today's meeting is over. What else does anyone have to say? Yamamoto said tiredly. He was over 2,000 years old, so his stamina was far from these young sprouts. Captain Aizen is very strong. His Sanpakudo Suigetsu can confuse the enemy. With Captain Aizen's participation, this mission will be a success. Dustless stood up and said. He didn't hesitate to drag Aizen down with him. He might be plotting something in Soul Society. Sosuke Aizen's heart trembled when he heard this. Of course, he had other things to do. He looked gloomily at Dushless, trying to maintain a smile. He quickly explained, Captain Aizen can indeed participate in this mission. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it later. Or leave it for your vice-captain. You'll head to the modern world in one day. The captain slammed the table and decided. He didn't give Aizen a chance to argue. Today's meeting is over. We'll talk about other things after the mission is over. Dustless's words sealed Aizen's path of retreat. Aizen's plan was ruined by Dustless's sudden interruption. Originally, he planned to use this short period of time to head to Hueco Mundo. After Balagan's death, he needed a new king of Hueco Mundo to maintain Hueco Mundo's rule. Now that Dustless had jumped out to mess things up, they had no choice but to rush to the modern world to face the Masked Legion. This damned brat, I'll find a chance to teach him a lesson. Although Aizen still had the same gentle smile on his face, the fire in his heart was off the charts. Ever since Dustless appeared, everything went well for him. Especially Dustless. Whenever Aizen thought that his plan was a success, he would, coincidentally, jump out and play the role of a troublemaker. Unknowingly, he was beaten by Dustless. Whether it was intentional or not, Aizen had already sentenced Dustless to death. The only pity was that he didn't have the right opportunity to do it. A day passed in the blink of an eye. The captains who had been waiting for a long time also came to the modern world through the portal. The modern world's Kangzucho was charming. It was completely different from the ancient Soul Society. The city had a different kind of charm. Urahara Kasuke's house. When the captains left the modern world, he received the exact news. You didn't call us here for a party, did you? I can't believe you're so generous. In a fragrant room, there were all kinds of food. The members of the Masked Legion gathered here and looked at the dazzling array of food. Their leader, Hirako Masako, was already drooling. Era. I'm not the stingy merchant you said I was. I'm just shy of money. Urahara Kasuke, who was dressed strangely, took out a fan to cover his face, only revealing a pair of smiling eyes. And this may be our last meal. Of course, we have to take out all our savings. As soon as these words fell, the originally joyous atmosphere became incomparably awkward and heavy. What do you mean? Did Soul Society find our traces? Hirako Masako retracted his chopsticks and looked at Urahara Kasuke with a puzzled expression. This middle-aged man with a wretched smile was definitely not as casual and cynical as he looked. In fact, he was meticulous and did things flawlessly. There is accurate news that the captains of Soul Society have all been dispatched. Although the purpose is not clear for the time being, it seems that other than us fugitives, no one can make Soul Society mobilize so many people. Urahara Kasuke's smiling eyes were filled with seriousness as he said bluntly. How did Soul Society find our traces? Over the years, we've been very low-key and rarely show up. Hirako Masako and others asked in unison, showing deep confusion. I don't know the specific situation. I only know that this was an order from Central Room 46. I'm afraid it was instigated by Aizen. Although it was just a guess, Urahara Kasuke was very sure. I believe you don't want to be caught, nor do you want to return to Soul Society. So, we can only fight with our backs against the river. Although Soul Society is aggressive, it's not like we have no chance of winning. At the same time, several extremely powerful spiritual pressures suddenly appeared, and the momentum swept across Kangzucho, looking for the Masked Legion. A battle of life and death was about to begin. Chapter 968. In Urahara Kasuke's shop, the faces of the Masked Legion gathered here were ugly. This huge Ryatsu couldn't be a lie, it was obviously captain level. They even recognized the Ryatsu of some people. Bang! Terashinko's face trembled, he smashed the table in front of him with his fist, his intestines were green with regret. He was the one who noticed Aizen's danger and purposely pulled him into the 5th Division as a vice-captain. His original intention was to secretly monitor Aizen Sosuke, but in the end, he was tricked by Aizen. So in today's situation, it was as difficult as ascending to the sky to remedy it. That damn Aizen. The hot-tempered Nishiori was the first to lose her temper. She carried her serrated broadsword and rushed out of the door, shouting in exasperation, "It must be Aizen's doing. That bastard took an inch and wanted a mile. I'm going to chop him up and make sure he can't be a man for the rest of his life." Stop her. Terashinko was shocked when he saw this. He knew Nishiori's temperament, she wasn't the kind of person who would act without thinking. He immediately reached out to grab her, but she easily dodged. Bang! Terashinko, who lost his support, fell to the ground, his face intimately touching the ground. His nose was red and swollen with some traces of blood. Damn it, it hurts. This group of people, Urahara Kasuke's face turned black, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This group of people gave him a deeper understanding of their unreliability. At the same time, he began to think about how to deal with Soul Society. A little carelessness this time may lead to eternal damnation. The sky was clear, and there were several figures standing in the sky. It was particularly eye-catching. Ah! Lord Yamamoto, Kozuke is so big, and they deliberately hide their Ryatsu. Where are we going to find them? Shunsui complained, like a young wife who was angry but didn't dare to speak, full of resentment. It was quite funny. Wuchen watched quietly and kept silent like a stone. He wasn't familiar with these captains and didn't have any interaction with them. There was no need for him to curry favor with them and bring disgrace upon himself. Am I seeing things? He actually came out of his own accord. After a few minutes of silence, a surprised exclamation attracted the attention of all the captains. Then, the mysterious voice continued as if it was talking to itself. Everyone's spiritual pressure content and density are extremely shocking. It seems that there is even great void realm spiritual pressure mixed in. Upon hearing this, all the captains turned their heads and looked towards the source. Everyone's gazes were not focused on those mysterious black dots that were swiftly rushing over. It was dustless. This guy actually discovered it before we did. All the captains exchanged glances, and they could all see the astonishment and shock in each other's eyes. He was just a mere vice-captain, yet his perception was so terrifying. It would have been fine if they had been careless just now, but the key point was that all of them had been focused, and Dustless had discovered the enemy's tracks before them. How could they not be shocked? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom boom boom. A sharp roar resounded in the sky within a radius of 10 miles. The sky instantly turned red, as demonic as blood, permeating with a deadly pressure. Everyone could smell the scent of death. Looking up, several spheres that could be called Vastolord's void flashes were heading towards them. This is Void Flash. Everyone, retreat. Sensing the extraordinary flashes, Shuinsue's eyelids twitched, and he immediately ordered loudly. He also quickly used flash step to escape. There were about 10 void flashes, and their strength was at least equivalent to a Juche's level voids. No one could treat it as a joke. However, there were exceptions to everything. Today, they had completely witnessed what was called a miracle. Retreat quickly. After retreating 10 miles, the spiritual pressure under Xuansui's feet finally stopped. Suddenly realizing that there was one person missing, he quickly glanced over and was surprised to see Dustless in a daze, as if he had just fallen asleep, standing in the same place with a hazy face. Get out of there quickly. The power of dozens of void flashes is enough to blast Kangzucho. Although Xuansui reminded him immediately, what should have happened could not be avoided. Boom boom boom. The power of dozens of void flashes was beyond the captain's imagination. The Kangzucho below was instantly blasted flat, and an unprecedented crater appeared. Even the captains who parachuted in the modern world, although they had already evacuated the central area, were still affected by the airwaves. It was as if they were slapped in the face, and their faces hurt. If Soul Society's Nirvana cocoon had not already done something to Kangzucho, the entire Kangzucho would have disappeared from the map with just this. Serves him right. A little vice-captain dares to come out and show off. Is there no one left in Soul Society? They actually sent such a pitiful and unlucky guy. Witnessing such an exaggerated attack, Rishiki laughed in high spirits. Ever since she was ruthlessly framed by Soul Society, her feelings for Soul Society had also disappeared. Next should be, the pitiful and unlucky guy you mentioned. It can't be me, right? Beside Rishiki, a gorgeous flash suddenly appeared. It was not as dazzling as the sun, but was very gentle and peaceful, making people involuntarily relax their vigilance. Then, a delicate and unscathed face condensed again. Sorry, the unlucky vice-captain you said should have died has revived again. Seeing this, Rishiki's eyes widened and her expression was blank. Unscathed? I clearly hit you. Yes, I must be dreaming. Rishiki muttered to herself absent-mindedly. She raised her hand with a dull expression, as if she wanted to give herself a slap to wake herself up from her dream. Chapter 969. Dustless couldn't help but laugh. This little blonde loli with a face full of freckles had a unique charm, especially when she raised her delicate hand to slap him. Dustless's face was full of mischief as he looked at Rishiri expectantly. Boom boom boom. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared in the distant sky, and a straight beam of light blasted towards him. Hato number 63, Thunder Roar Cannon. The flash of light was like a golden spear, and its sharp tip was enough to penetrate any material. Even if the captain-level Grim Reaper didn't die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. This kind of boring, useless, and exhausting attack should be used less in the future. Looking over, his dark pupils landed on the masked blonde man with yellow hair and a strange smile on his face. He had a sloppy look. He wore a white bone mask on half of his face, similar to Great Void, and there was residual void spiritual pressure all over his body. His murderous aura was also cold and ruthless, no different from Void. Bang! The golden spear easily penetrated Dustless, who didn't dodge, and destroyed him. However, there wasn't the expected separation of his body, nor the miserable appearance of his body being burnt. Dustless, who was attacked, just turned into thousands of photons, swaying lazily in the air. Then, under everyone's shocked gaze, his body reformed again. This guy, what kind of monster is he? When did such a character appear in Soul Society? Teira Masako's face stiffened and was replaced by shock. His heart trembled fiercely as he looked at Dustless, who was completely unscathed after being pierced by Tao Breaker 63. His impassioned heart of wanting to take revenge on Soul Society fell to the bottom of the valley. A far-fetched idea popped up in his mind. Could it be that this guy can ignore physical attacks? Don't worry about him, Rishiri, leave quickly. Sensing the danger from Dustless's cold eyes, Tera Masako's heart turned cold. He quickly shouted at Rishiri, who was still in a daze, "What are you daydreaming about? Quickly retreat." "Want to run? That's fine, but leave something behind first, at least let me collect some interest." Dustless sneered. Immediately, a demonic low voice resounded through the sky. In mid-air, a visible ripple surged and locked on all the members of the masked army. Dustless would not choose to remain silent after being attacked by one or two waves of people. His face was aloof and cold. There was no emotion in his indifferent eyes. People of different paths couldn't make plans together. Wuchen wouldn't choose to say much to this group of masked men. The two sides originally belonged to two different worlds. The spiritual pressure in his body surged, like an erupting stormy sea. It was uncontrollable. A thick flash condensed in his palm. The final target was the members of the Masquerade Society. Tao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon Strikes the Thief. A huge beam of light, of the world of the world of the world of the world. It was as if it could destroy the whole world. The space trembled slightly and was even distorted horribly. The high-density light beam was as fast as lightning. In the unseen world, one could hear a loud dragon's roar, revealing a kind of heart-palpitating energy wave. Everyone could smell the scent of death. This guy, he must have done it on purpose. This bastard must be a captain. He deliberately took off the captain's haori to bait me. Indignant and unhappy voices rang out from the crowd of the maskers. Like a willful child, they fixed their eyes on the past. It was the same in the past. Leave it to me. Looking at the incoming beam of light, the former vice-captain of the Path of Keto, Akita Bo-Shien, said. At this moment, his face was full of confidence, and his eyes were shining. Heaven's pride, iron wall, dragon's roar, lion's roar, tiger's roar, wolf's run, cut off heaven and earth before it collapses. The sonorous and powerful ancient incantation came out of Akita Bo-Shien's mouth. These obscure and incomprehensible words gave birth to a different kind of miracle. Bakudo's 81, Sky Breaker. A transparent wall covered the sky, and a group of people from the masked legion hid behind it. Don't worry, the normal 81st Bakudo can block the 89th Hado, and the Sky Slasher that I've chanted with all my might can block the 90th Hado, the Black Coffin. Shota Bo-Shien laughed proudly and confidently. Boom boom boom, the beam of light came, and the attack was unprecedentedly powerful. Whether this wall, which was as thin as a cicada's wing, could block it was quite mysterious. Boom boom boom, the thick beam of light crashed into the transparent defensive wall, and there was a violent tremor. Immediately, the beam of light rushed forward like crazy, and hit the defensive wall with all its strength. Because of the intensity, there were dazzling sparks. However, from the beginning to the end, the transparent wall could not be shaken. If you want to break my defense, the 88 Hado's power is far from enough. It needs to be at least 90. Akita Bo-Shien smiled. It's indeed not bad. Dustless nodded undeniably. The members of the Keto were indeed first class in the Keto. Suddenly, the corner of his mouth lifted into a dark sneer. However, as you said, the normal Sky Breaker can block the Flying Dragon Strikes the Thief Sky Shaking Thunder Cannon. However, that's only for ordinary people. Sorry, I'm not in this category. Caw caw caw, as Dustless's contemptuous and arrogant voice fell, the crystal-clear transparent wall showed a crack the size of a finger, and it finally couldn't withstand the powerful force and burst. It was torn apart by the terrifying spiritual pressure and turned into flying snow fragments. Akita Bo-Shien's pride was also torn to pieces by Dustless. The scene changed rapidly, and all the masked army were stunned. Looking at the thick beam of light devouring them, they didn't even have the chance to dodge in such a short distance. When everyone was in despair, a figure swept across and faced the invincible light without fear. Chapter 970. Under the shroud of light, the members of the masked legion were as small as a chestnut in the ocean. However, the figure that appeared out of thin air was calm. The hurricane that erupted from the 88th Hado blew his clothes, but he didn't back down at all. Regardless of whether this indifference was a forced act or if he had a card up his sleeve, no one could ignore his existence. Era, it's really a fierce Kido, but Ryatsu and moves have been interpreted. Urahara Kasuke's sloppy voice spread, and then he pulled out the Zanpakuto hidden in his crutch, and casually drew a circle in the void in front of him, and then a crimson shield emerged from the water, resolutely blocking the sky. Boom boom boom, this kind of casual and seemingly unreliable trick was surprisingly strange and tenacious. Moreover, it was very effective. Dustless's devastating attack was easily defended by Urahara Kasuke. I was almost killed. Be careful later, don't forget that it's the captains of Soul Society. Urahara Kasuke breathed a sigh of relief, then turned and solemnly reminded, also, that vice-captain is not an ordinary person, his strength is comparable to the captain's, or even beyond the captain's, don't be confused by his vice-captain's coat. Urahara Kasuke, do you have time to worry about others? A cold and indifferent voice full of killing intent resounded behind everyone. A handsome, tall man with a gentle smile on his mouth flashed out of thin air, and of course, his attack was not inferior to Mount Tai. Hado 91,000 hands bright sky cannon. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Endless silver light poured down, and the entire sky was particularly dazzling. The light that almost filled the entire sky connected together and turned into a vast energy tide that spread out. Aizen Sosuke. A group of members of the Masked Legion, seeing the culprit who tortured them for hundreds of years appear, all of them glared at him, and their killing intent raged like a hurricane. Void Flash. Seeing their enemy appear, the members of the Masked Legion mustered all their strength and used their strongest moves to fight back against the energy tide that filled the sky. Several void flashes stood out. Their density and power were frightening. Wherever the red light flew, the sky where it landed would vaguely distort and evaporate. Even though number 91's Tao Breaker was powerful enough to destroy 2 void flashes, it was still no match for the other void flashes. The silver tide of energy was destroyed by the void flashes, and the void flashes rose from the ground and locked onto Sosuke Aizen. Boom boom boom. An unprecedented tremor swept through the area. The center where Aizen Sosuke was standing was directly torn apart by the violent energy waves. At the place where he stood, the void had been completely shattered. The horizon was pitch black with a terrifying gravitational force. Above him was an endless dark domain that connected to the universe and the galaxy. Are you serious? Captain Aizen's spiritual pressure disappeared. If Captain Aizen was hit by so many void flashes, his chances of surviving are 0. Noticing that Aizen's spiritual pressure suddenly disappeared, Dustless's first thought was that Aizen was dead, but then he looked at the old man Ikamaru Jin and confirmed that Aizen wasn't dead. He hid his spiritual pressure and deliberately hid in a corner, overlooking the battlefield like a poisonous snake. If Hirako and the others showed any flaws, he would definitely jump out and kill them. Aizen's spiritual pressure really disappeared. This time, he's dead for sure. Masako Hirako took a deep breath as his eyes shone brightly. The great worry that had been plaguing his mind for many years might have been eliminated. He was in a particularly good mood, as if he was strolling through the clouds. Pfft. A sharp pain suddenly spread from his waist to his whole body. Hirako's face instantly turned pale. He turned his head and saw a nightmare figure. That cold face was different from before, it was filled with a sense of isolation, Sosuke Aizen. It's really sad, Captain Hirako, Aizen smiled faintly as he whispered in Hirako's ear. You want to be my enemy with this level. You're too naive. You're just like a child who hasn't grown up yet. The target they hit just now was just an illusion caused by Kyoka Suigetsu. In reality, Sosuke Aizen wasn't injured at all. Hirako. The members of the Masked Legion were shocked when they saw this, and they glared at Aizen. Among them, Rishi was the most furious, and she immediately released her Zanpakuto. Cut him down, Orochi. After using Shurkai, the Zanpakuto turned into a large Zanpakuto. It looked like a ferocious beast with a bloody mouth as it swept towards Sosuke Aizen's face. Shoot him, Shinigami. A huge cold light came from the side. The front of the light was so dazzling that no one dared to look at it directly. It was extremely fast, and when they opened their eyes wide, they saw a Zanpakuto coming towards them. Boom! Just as he was about to rip Ri's stomach open and devour her whole body, Rokush Kencher Nishi, who was behind him, kicked Ri's away in the nick of time to save her life. The ground in the distance was directly torn into a canyon by the Shinigami. Don't be careless, follow the battle plan I just said, split up, scatter the captains. Urahara Kasuke ordered in the face of such an embarrassing situation. The members of the Masked Legion nodded and flew towards each other. Are you my captain? After a while, looking at the figure flying in front of him, Dustless was quite surprised. Chapter 971. Wu Chen's opponent was a pretty girl. She had braided hair and was wearing a sailor suit. She was wearing a pair of unique colored glasses. She had the appearance of a cute female student. She was the former vice captain of the 8th Division, Lisa Sasamaru. How strange. You don't think I'm a pushover, do you? Wu Chen was not in a hurry to make a move. He stared at the miniskirt and the beautiful legs that were exposed outside. His pair of ordinary eyes were exceptionally cold. The deadly momentum also became peaceful and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Bring it on. Lisa Sasamaru, who pulled out her Zanpakuto, was on alert. Of course, she didn't think that Dustless let her go because of his conscience. This was just the last preparation before the storm. Her brain cells spun rapidly, 10 times faster than usual, thinking about Dustless's next attack. Due to the excessive use of her brain, Lisa Yasadama's beautiful hair fell a little. Dustless's next sentence directly killed all the cells in Lisa Sasamaru's brain. She was so angry that she was on the verge of collapse. She pointed her finger at Dustless in disbelief. She was furious. White skin, beautiful face, slim waist, curvy breasts, long legs. How enviable. After observing for a while, Dustless's eyes were shining with the light of an expert. He gave a thumbs up to Lisa Sasamaru and then praised sincerely, a perfect woman like you should be admired by everyone, but you read porn all day. How sinful. You've been thinking about this all day. Lisa Sasamaru's mouth twitched when she remembered Dustless's serious and focused expression, and her voice was trembling. I got the latest news from Kasuke Urahara. I heard that you defeated the king of Hueco Mundo, Baligan. Lisa Sasamaru's tone was light and full of doubt, and the way she looked at Dustless was the same. I was praising you. It's called art, not perverted. My professional foresight is far from what ordinary people can compare to. Dustless answered honestly. He opened his mouth and was about to speak when a wave of fierce attacks and angry curses followed. A scumbag like you can actually defeat Baligan. What a joke. It seems that the rumor is true. It was indeed Baligan's hidden illness that caused his body to collapse on its own. Lisa's voice was full of fire. Her first impression of Dustless was that he was rather sunny, with a warm smile on his face. However, after hearing Dustless's words, her impression of him collapsed instantly. The dense and unique spiritual pressure all over his body began to erupt. Void flash. The huge energy ball flew toward him, leaving behind an unerasable afterimage in its wake. This kind of pure physical attack won't work on me. How many times have I repeated this sentence? Dustless muttered to himself in a low voice. Just like before, his whole body was still motionless, like a towering tree rooted to the ground. He neither ran nor dodged, allowing the void flash to hit him. Boom! Boom! The violent explosion spread into the endless sky, and the rapid impact spread out. The matter affected by the void flash turned into ashes, leaving only a huge ball of fire burning with black smoke in the sky. Did it work? Lisa Sasamaru's face was full of hope, and her eyes stared at the depths of the fire. Her deep eyes were unusually bright, and the scene inside could be seen at a glance. Everything changed under her eyes. Success, are you dreaming? In the flames of life's prohibition, an untimely voice suddenly came. Immediately, the dazzling light condensed and vaguely turned into a human silhouette, and then walked out of the smoke. Dustless was still intact, without the slightest injury. His bright eyes always maintained indifference and calmness. It seemed that no trick in this world could hurt him. Lisa Sasamaru felt frustrated. It's impossible for half-baked people like you to defeat me. Dustless said calmly with his hands crossed. His tone had a kind of pity. In this world without hockey, it's almost impossible to touch his body. It's useful to all creatures on this planet. Any attack is useless. Don't be so sure. Lisa Sasamaru said coldly. Still want to resist? I advise you not to struggle in vain. Dustless slightly raised his eyebrows, listening to her words. It was obvious that she still wanted to resist to the end. Just as he was about to make a move, the small object in Lisa Sasamaru's hand suddenly attracted Dustless's attention. What is that? Urahara Kasuke invented it. Lisa Sasamaru's hand was holding a dark square box, which looked quite mysterious. Goodbye. With a smug smile on her face, Lisa Sasamaru glanced at Dustless, and then the dark box in her hand suddenly shone brightly, and a black hole appeared behind her. Thanks to Manager Urahara. Then, he took a big stride forward and entered the cave. What the hell is going on? Dustless didn't expect this girl who likes to read pornographic novels to suddenly run away. His face was full of confusion, and his eyes subconsciously looked around, not only Lisa Sasamaru, but also the rest of the masked corps, and they all disappeared strangely. Want to run? No way. His pupils rapidly turned into scarlet Sharingan, and his eyes stared at the black hole that hasn't closed yet, and a powerful eye power gushed out. Kamui. It should be safe now. In the dark space, Lisa Sasamaru breathed heavily, but at this moment, a bright light shone in from behind her, and a teasing sentence. Follow me to Soul Society. It's safe there. Chapter 972. The mocking voice from behind made Lisa's nerves tense up. She turned around with a mechanical expression, only to see the black space that was supposed to be closed was torn apart by some kind of mysterious energy wave with absolute power. It was as worthless as a piece of paper. Young lady, those who are targeted by me can only admit defeat. The clear voice was very loud and clear, revealing an invisible and mysterious energy that could steal one's soul. It quickly devoured Lisa's rationality, and her originally clear and confused eyes suddenly became incomparably hesitant. In the dark and sealed world, there was only dead silence. Lisa Sasamaru was the only one there, and the strange world around her was giving her the cold shoulder. There was no vitality, and she was the only one in this world. What is this place? Lisa muttered to herself, her voice was filled with uncertainty about the future. At the same time, an unprecedented exhaustion swept through her body, numbing her nervous system. Just when she was about to fall asleep, a few figures suddenly appeared in her mind. Her old friends, the members of the masked army, one by one, appeared in her mind. For a moment, she was full of energy, looking at the strange and cold dark space. After careful analysis, her eyes shone with wisdom. Poochie. Lisa's white and tender arm splattered blood everywhere. Her face was as white as paper. Using self-harm to awaken her inner rationality, the drowsiness in her mind instantly disappeared. At the same time, the strange dark space in front of her also disappeared with the wind. Where is that guy? Lisa, who regained her consciousness, looked left and right, bitterly searching for traces of Dushless, but strangely there was no trace of him, as if he had disappeared from the world without a trace. This is really surprising. You can actually get rid of the illusion, worthy of praise. But, what awaits you is not the dawn of victory, but more ruthless, despair. The ghostly voice sounded in Lisa's ears. She felt a pair of cold eyes staring at her, and her soul trembled. Because it was an illusion, she was not injured. Shio shio shio. Without even thinking, she decisively turned into a gust of wind and disappeared, heading straight for the end point behind her. The pressure that Dustless brought to Lisa's Shibatara was too great, exceeding all the enemies she had ever known. It was like a giant bullying a weak baby. This was cheating. Damn it, when did such a monster appear in Soul Society? Lisa cursed in her heart. At the same time, she increased her speed and rushed toward the exit in front of her. Only by reaching there could she barely survive. Dustless stopped and looked at the area where Lisa was rushing at full speed. His eyes flashed with surprise. Hueco Mundo, what is she doing there? Could it be that the Great Voids intend to help this group of masks? Driven by curiosity, Dustless's feet were like a gust of wind, following closely behind Hueco's circle and Lisa Itsumuru. Hueco Mundo, as the name suggested, was the headquarters of Hueco Mundo. It was also a barren land. Ever since the king of Hueco Mundo, Baligan, died tragically in Soul Society, the ownerless Hueco Mundo had fallen into a reign of terror. In order to fight for the position of king of Hueco Mundo, the Great Voids had cruel battles every day. In the sky above Hueco Mundo, the sky suddenly distorted, and a long and narrow black crack was drawn. Then, a beautiful figure rushed out from it in a sorry state. Then, the black crack closed, and it was as good as new. Lisa Yukimaro looked down at Hueco Mundo with a relaxed expression. She finally had the confidence to deal with Dushless. In just the blink of an eye, the closed void began to distort rapidly, and then burst open with a bang. Dustless walked out from it. Unlike Lisa Yukimaru, Dustless, who just came out, was treated cruelly. Several flashes of different colors greeted him mercilessly. Is this how Hueco Mundo treats its guests? Could it be that this group of cold Great Voids are also lecherous, hitting men to please women? Dustless's face darkened. Lisa Yukimaru acted as if nothing had happened. She completely ignored the existence of the flashes and locked on to herself. Boom boom boom. The huge flashes exploded, and the whole sky trembled, stirring up ripples. Dustless's body was also split into 4 or 5, turning into photons that filled the sky. But even so, in the end, he was restored as usual, and it could not shake him at all. No wonder it attracted me to Hueco Mundo. I'm afraid it was already prepared. Looking down, it was obvious that something was wrong with the Great Voids below. They all roared at Dushless, but Lisa Yukimaru was ignored by the murderous Great Voids as if she did not exist. But, what's the use of this? Dustless shook his head. There were too many Great Voids on the ground, as many as the grains of sand in the Ganges. But, no matter how many there were, it was useless. Dustless could not do it with numbers. Take your time to deal with them. After saying that, Lisa Yukimaru took out the mysterious black box again. It flashed with a strange light, and the space beside her split open again, and she stepped into it. Dustless was about to chase after her, but the blind Great Void swarmed over. The number of them was so great that it made people hallucinate, as if the whole world was their enemy. There were too many voids. Although they were all low-level voids and had not even reached the level of Jillian, there were thousands of them. He mobilized high-density chakra in his body, and his eyes changed, as if he wanted to destroy all the creatures in Hueco Mundo. He was filled with murderous intent. Super Shinra Tensei. A super strong impact visible to the naked eye spread over an area of 10 kilometers in an instant. Chapter 973. But at this time, an unexpected figure appeared in front of him. Dustless immediately knew that it was an enemy, and a very strong one at that. The person who came was very muscular, with eyebrow rings and earrings, white hair, short hair at the temples and back, and long bangs in the front. Just by looking at him, one could tell that he was a fierce man who was easily angered. The former captain of the 9th Division, Rokush Kensher. Shinigami, you almost killed my companions just now. So, I'm going to tear you apart alive to avenge them. Rokush Kensher pointed his thick finger at Dustless and swore. Looking at this guy with pity, in the eyes of Dustless, it was just a boring declaration of death. Turn into ashes, wind of the broken earth. A gust of wind hit Dustless from the front. The range was extremely wide, sharper than the blade of a sword, and the surrounding sky was also filled with this kind of sharp wind blade. Wind attribute Zanpakuto. Dustless's injured body was healed, and he was curious. Rokush Kenshi's Zanpakuto was covered in white light, and it was extremely fierce. The wind that could easily cut through steel came from the body of the Zanpakuto. With a chuckle, Dustless hooked his finger at him and said, "Bring it on." Arrogant. Hearing this, Rokush Kenshi's face was cold, and his body swept up a storm, and it was no different from Dustless's speed, and it was impossible to see his movement speed. Pucci. When he realized, Dustless's body was separated from his body, and the white Zanpakuto pierced through his body, and Dustless was brutally cut in half by Rokush Kensher. This is just the beginning. Rokush Kensher glanced at the two halves of the body ruthlessly, and then his Zanpakuto shook, and Dustless's body changed dramatically again. Rokush Kensher also stepped back 100 meters, and then he thought of the danger of his Zanpakuto, and then he stepped back a few hundred meters before he felt relieved. Pucci. Pucci. The incorporeal blades of wind suddenly spread out from Dustless's body and attacked the surrounding space uncontrollably, leaving thick marks on the ground. The host was unable to control it. No matter if it was an enemy or an ally, anyone who got close to the host would suffer the destruction of the wind blades. Roshi Kensher himself was no exception. On the other hand, Dustless himself was in an even more miserable state. He was sliced into countless pieces in a short period of time. But even so, he was still the same as before, and not a single drop of blood flowed out from him. This should work. Rakechi Fist Nishi heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to launch another intensive attack, a sudden voice immediately shattered his high fighting spirit. Frankly speaking, any move is useful to me, but it's impossible to hit my body. However, your ability is very interesting. Everything that is hit by it will explode. Dustless's body, which had been broken into countless pieces, reassembled. He said calmly, "Perhaps there is someone in this world who can hurt me, but one thing is for sure. At least this person is not you." A high-density flash condensed at the tip of his foot, and after locking onto Roki Boxer Nishi, he kicked out. Light speed kick. Roki Boxer Nishi was shocked when he saw this. Sensing the terrifying speed of the light attack, he immediately reacted rationally and used his unique void form ability without hesitation. Of course, for the sake of safety, in addition to void form, he also used his best move. Bankai, Iron Fist Wind Break. Roki Boxer Nishi's Ryatsu increased several times in a short few seconds. After using his Bankai, his fighting posture also changed dramatically. He held a sword with teeth in each hand, and his arms were wrapped by caterpillar tracks. The caterpillar tracks on both arms were connected to his back, and there was also armor on his back. His Bankai was able to pour the explosive power into his fists, and the explosive power would endlessly pour into his opponent when his fists hit. All in all, it was a very powerful Bankai. Caw caw caw, Roki boxer Nishi stomped his feet on the ground, and suddenly the ground collapsed. He gathered a powerful force in his hands, and then calmly looked at the light that was swooping down. With a disdainful face, he punched out. Bang! The light was effectively restrained, and it couldn't penetrate Roki boxer Nishi's fist. It could only graze his fist, and the effect was minimal. After a few seconds, the light became weaker. Whoosh! Roki boxer Nishi's tiger eyes revealed a hint of dominance, and the light that was in a stalemate immediately collapsed. Then, the Ryatsu that erupted from his body was no weaker than Vastolord's. Roki boxer Nishi locked his eyes on Dushless, and when he was about to use his full strength to attack, something strange happened again. A black shadow rushed over, and its front end was surrounded by a cold light. It was so focused on observing Dustless's Roki boxer Nishi that it didn't notice this subtle change. Idiot, behind you! Seeing that Roki boxer Nishi didn't know what was going on and was just looking at him, Dustless couldn't help but complain, "How did someone like you become the captain?" Roki boxer Nishi was stunned when he heard this. He suddenly felt that he was locked by a mysterious killing intent. Puchi! Even with the armor on his back, the invincible cold light easily shattered it, and penetrated deep into Roki boxer Nishi's internal organs, devouring his life force like a whale. In just a few seconds, this former captain's life was ended. I thought it was just a simple mission, but it seems that the situation is getting more and more complicated. Dustless squinted his eyes, and there was a strange light in his eyes. He carefully looked at the person who gave Roki boxer Nishi a fatal blow. Chapter 974. Following Dustless's line of sight, the newcomer was a tall man with a ferocious face and a murderous aura. He had a broad physique and a sturdy waist. His strong body exuded explosive power, especially his Zanpakuto, which was half the length of a person and was still stained with blood. Just a glance from this person would make you feel like your life was in danger. The wind swept through the world, and the sand danced in the air. The mysterious man who attacked Rokush Kencher was wearing a pure white captain's haori, Kenpachi Ghost Yenching. The order from Central Room 46 was to capture them alive. But now you killed him. This is a great dereliction of duty, Captain Ghost Yenching. Dustless's body stood in the sky, looking down at Kenpachi Ghost Yenching, who gave Rokush Kencher a fatal blow. His cold face suddenly raised a mischievous smile. What Ghost Yenching did was in line with Dustless's intentions. Kiki, hearing this, Yenching Kenpachi was unmoved. His Zanpakuto slowly pulled out Rokush Kanishi's crushed organs, causing Rokush Kanishi's body to twitch and spit out blood. What does it matter? I'll kill you soon anyway, and then I'll just blame everything on you. How about the script that I've carefully written for you? Kiki. This is the script you prepared for me. Just like you, you're extremely shallow. Hearing this, Wu Chen narrowed his deep black eyes. The flickering light in Wu Chen's eyes was particularly terrifying. Then, he smiled and said, "Why don't you listen to the script that I have prepared for you, or rather, for myself?" What do you mean? Kenpachi Ghost Yenching's ugly face stiffened. Smelling Dustless's words, he looked at him in confusion. No matter what, this time you will definitely die. Calm down. Dustless completely ignored these words. They went in one ear and out the other. After reorganizing his words and thoughts, for fear that the inexperienced Yenching Kenpachi would not understand the meaning, he said in a very slow tone with a smile, "Captain Yenching Kenpachi's divine power is unparalleled. With overwhelming strength, he inflicted heavy losses on the Masked Legion. Who would have thought that the world is unpredictable? He was killed by Rokukai Kenpachi, who rushed over, and then, hee. This laughter was abnormally gloomy. Ghost Yenching Jinba's mouth was dry and his tongue was dry. His heart thumped and he knew that things were not going well. Wuchen didn't care about Yen Guicheng's reaction. Captain Yen Guicheng, who was ambushed, unfortunately fell. Then I appeared. I don't need to say what's next. You should know. Don't be so proud. Yen Cheng's face was ashen. Naturally, he knew what dustless meant. He guessed that dustless would try his best to kill Roshi Boxer Nishi, and then take his corpse to Soul Society to claim credit. Not only that, but Sword 8's death in battle would also necessitate the election of a new team leader. In the end, it was very likely that the position would fall to Dustless, who had distinguished himself in battle. This kid is good at calculating. Yenching Kenpachi's old face was twitching, and his round head was smoking. Obviously, he was very angry. The chakra in his body was raging, and the whole person's hostility was rising to a new level. You two bastards! A hoarse and low roar came without warning, and then a very dangerous energy fluctuation surged. In the blink of an eye, Dustless and Yenching Kenpachi were swallowed up. Looking at the source, the swaying Roshi Boxer Nishi's body turned crimson, filled with a blazing heat. The temperature as high as thousands of degrees Celsius instantly forced Yenching Kenpachi to retreat. Not only the body, but Roshi Boxer Nishi was also flashing the red light of a beast. It seems that Roshi Boxer Nishi wants to die together. Anyway, he has already stepped into the coffin. It's best to use that to pull me and Yenching Kenpachi into the coffin. This is understandable. After all, that forbidden technique uses burning the body as a medium. But it's really crazy. His observation hockey rippled like water ripples, and all the movements within a radius of 10 miles were all played out in Dustless's eyes. Boom boom boom, the ground under Dustless's feet trembled violently, and an indescribable heat spread out. The surrounding Dainu with weak Ryatsu was instantly turned into ashes. The range of the vibration gradually extended, swallowing the sky and the earth, and the entire Hueco Mundo seemed to be trembling. Yenching Kenpachi, who noticed the abnormality, looked at Roshi Boxer Nishi in disbelief. Only then did he realize that this guy was once a captain-level Shinigami, and he must also know that forbidden technique. You want to drag me to the grave with you? Ghost Yenching, whose expression changed greatly, flew into a rage out of humiliation. Soon after, his spittle flew all over the sky. He gritted his teeth and said, "You want to drag me down with you? Dream on." Shoo shoo shoo, Yenching Kenpachi's body gradually lost feeling and turned into an afterimage. As for his body, it had already rushed madly towards Roshi Boxer Nishi. Idiot, it's too late. Roshi Boxer Nishi smiled calmly, and the ground under his feet suddenly appeared a huge fiery red saber-shaped shadow. The moment Yenching Kenpachi touched him, Roshi Boxer Nishi indifferently blew prelude to doomsday. Path of destruction, cremation with one blade. The saber-shaped shadow covered the sky and the sun, and the attack range was extremely wide. Roshi Boxer Nishi was extremely ruthless, and even he was in the center of the attack. Caw caw caw. The earth shattered, and a flaming broadsword with boundless power appeared out of thin air. The blazing flames covered the boundless horizon. Not only Ghost Yenching, but even Sword 8 and Dustless in the sky were hit by the flames. The great void within a radius of tens of kilometers was all melted and evaporated by the blazing heat. The ground was all scorched, and all life was wiped out. The ground 100 kilometers away was also affected, and there were violent vibrations. The blazing heat swept through the entire Hueco Mundo. It was a mass extinction. Roshi Boxer Nishi exhausted all his spiritual pressure and used his body as a medium to perform cremation with one blade. The power was beyond imagination, and even dustless in the sky was beaten to a pulp. In just a few minutes, the body was destroyed several times after recombining several times. Dustless benefited from his elemental transformation ability. It was not hard to imagine what would happen to Yenching Kenpachi in the end. Chapter 975. The blazing high temperature spread to Hueco Mundo. It was as if they were living in a hot steamer, unable to breathe. The thin oxygen was all evaporated, and the affected central area was in a mess. Bang bang bang, the giant blade-shaped flame had obviously reached its limit. A dazzling crimson light flashed and immediately turned into countless fragments. The blade light that was about to destroy Hueco Mundo was extinguished. The greater voids in Hueco Mundo also barely regained their calm, and the shadow of the invisible guillotine above their heads also disappeared. He should be completely dead now. Well, I don't have to do anything. Dustless, who was floating in the sky, was still safe and sound. He looked down at the scorched ground below with extreme calmness. In a world without hockey, he was like a fish in water. Where's Ghost Yenching? His gaze fell on the ground below. There was only one corpse. It was Luce Kangxi. His body was black, and the stench of meat floated from his body from time to time. All his internal organs were burned, and he couldn't be more dead. The former captain of a generation fell into such a state. It was indeed a pity that the world was fickle. As for Ghost Yenching, there was no trace of him. Are you looking for me? A familiar voice sounded in his ears, and then a cold light swept from the side. Dustless was different from before. He felt that something was wrong with the blade light. This time, he didn't use his elemental transformation ability. Kamui. The blade light passed through Dustless's body, but he was safe and sound. At the critical moment, his body quickly blurred and dodged this fatal attack. Stained with blood. What is this? Bankai. Turning his head, Dustless stared at Ghost Yenching Sampukudo attentively. Unlike before, the entire blade was bleeding blood red out of nowhere. When it landed on the ground, the originally white desert instantly became incomparably pitch black. It was similar to the aging power of Bailgang back then. That was close. If I didn't have enough time to use Bankai, I'm afraid I would have been killed by one sword cremation. Ghost Yenching twisted his fat body and said with ease. At this time, his upper body was naked, and his skin was very dark. His body was also filled with a faint stench of meat. Although he used Bankai immediately and greatly weakened one sword cremation's attack, he was still slightly injured. Your ability is not bad. Looking carefully at the blood-stained Sampukudo, Wuchen nodded slightly, and his eyes lit up. He instantly understood something. It can even corrode photons. This is the first time I have seen such a mysterious Sampukudo. When he used elementization just now, the photons that had yet to disperse were all corroded by the soul-assimilating blade wrapped in blood. Tsk tisk, Ghost Yenching laughed arrogantly to cover up the shock in his heart. He thought in surprise, what the hell is going on with this kid? It's obviously just an ordinary attack, but he instantly understood the ability of my Sampukudo. Anything that came into contact with the blood flowing from the tip of his blade, even if it was a photon, would be corroded. As long as it came into contact with the strange blood, it would instantly vanish into thin air. Tao Breaker 63, 6-rod light prison. The chakra in his body surged as Ghost Yenching's eighth blade pointed at Dustless. 6 huge light ribbons attacked from all directions. In the blink of an eye, Dustless was bound in place. It's over. Seeing this, Ghost Yenching laughed and attacked with his terrifying blade. The purple light at the tip of the blade was pulsating with a demonic luster. This 6-rod light prison is much stronger than before. After using Bankai, my strength in all aspects has improved. Looking down at the huge light ribbons around his waist, Dustless lowered his head and thought. Last time, he just walked around and tore apart the 6-rod light prison with his powerful strength. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The blood-red slash came head-on, and a trench was formed on the ground. The area covered by the red light was a mess, and it was a deadly threat. In a trance, Dustless seemed to see the black and white impermanence coming to take his life. There is such a heaven-defying Bankai. It can directly melt everything, even photons. Could it be that when I tried to use elementization just now, thinking of the experience that he had never had before, Dustless whispered. In fact, the purple-red blood was quite similar to Amaterasu, and the ability was quite similar. However, Amaterasu could not devour photons, but Ghost Yanqing could. Then his expression turned serious, and the eye power of Rinnegan overflowed, and a vast repulsive force suddenly appeared. Mahabharata. The repulsive force that was far more powerful than Super Shinra Tensei exploded. It was boundless, and it was aimed at Ghost Yanqing. In an instant, his entire body was annihilated. An unprecedentedly deep pit was formed on the ground. Ghost Yanqing's 8th sword disappeared into thin air along with his attack. This technique is undefeatable. A lightsaber appeared in his hand, and Dustless waved his hand to break the 6-rod light prison that bound his body. He immediately walked toward Ghost Yanqing, intending to give him the final fatal blow. Mahabharata was a technique that belonged exclusively to Dustless. Its meaning was quite simple, and its theory was the same as Amaterasu. Where the gaze was focused, there would be a repulsive force that was no weaker than Super Shinra Tensei. It was unguarded and had great destructive power. It's over, Captain Yanqing. Looking down at the pale Ghost Yanqing on the ground, Dustless said indifferently, "You can go in peace. I will replace you as the captain of the 11th Division, and I will finish what you have not done." Then Dustless slowly raised his lightsaber. "I can't die like this." Ghost Yanqing ignored the pain from his broken bones and tendons, and forcibly mobilized the Ryatsu in his body, and a ferocious look flashed in his eyes. What is wrong with the people in this world? They want to die together with the enemy so easily. Dustless's face was full of confusion. Ghost Yanqing's eyes were quite similar to Rockafist's Nishi's, with hysterical madness. Chapter 976. Beasts on the verge of desperation were very dangerous, and their combat power would often skyrocket. Kenpachi on the verge of desperation was the same, and his destructive power was far beyond the so-called beasts. The Ghost Yanqing's 8th swordsman was just that terrifying. His strong will far exceeded his strength. After being hit by a heaven-defying technique like the Mahabharata, he was already severely injured. Almost all the bones in his body were broken, but he was still able to miraculously stand up. This was all driven by the will to kill Dustless. "Oh. There is no deep hatred between us, why are you so obsessed with me?" Dustless said indifferently as he waved the Kusanagi sword in his hand. "With your current state, you can't even move your body, let alone fight me. Stop talking, you despicable bastard, I will not let you go, and I will drag you to hell even if I die." Kenpachi Gue Yanqing held his body up, and his eyes widened, filled with a crazy determination, and immediately used all of his strength to stab the Zanpakuto into his abdomen. Puchi Puchi, the demonic Zanpakuto collapsed, and slowly disappeared like fragments, and merged into Kenpachi Gue Yanqing's body, and immediately his body changed strangely. He can merge with the Zanpakuto. Even with Dustless's experience, he couldn't help but be stunned at this moment. This was the first time in his life that he encountered such an incredible thing. This guy is really something. I thought he was just a normal captain-level rookie after being defeated by Zaraki Kenpachi, but I didn't expect him to have such a trump card. Now it seemed that every Kenpachi lived up to their name, and every Kenpachi had their own trump card. Oh, the already dark skies suddenly became gloomy. Looking up, an unprecedented black shadow covered the sky, and compared to him, Jillian of Hueco Mundo was just a child. It was at least 100 or 200 meters tall. This is my final trump card. Once I use it, I'll die completely. It's also a move that puts my life on the line. Ghost Yanqing looked down at Dushless, who was as insignificant as a bug. His killing intent was awe-inspiring. Of course I can see that. No matter what happens in the end, you will die. Dustless leaped into the air and looked straight at Ghost Yanchang's head. Light gathered at his feet and he mercilessly kicked at Ghost Yanchang's body. Lightspeed kick. In the dark sky that was blocked out, this extremely dense ray of light was extremely dazzling and full of destructive power. Boom boom boom. The deadly explosion spread out and targeted Ghost Yanchang's heart. A ball of flames engulfed his entire being. However, Ghost Yanqing did not move at all. Clearly, he was not injured at all. Humph. You overestimate yourself. Yanqing, whose entire body was engulfed in flames, sneered. His nostrils, which were larger than a person's, blew out a gust of cold wind. The sarcasm in his tone was undisguised, as if he was talking to a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Is that so? Then why do you look like this? Dustless asked in return. Ghost Yanchang's saber wounds were hideous and frightening. Even his white bones, as well as his internal organs, were exposed to the air. And the instigator was Dustless, a person whose spiritual pressure was not worth mentioning. You have a sharp tongue. Hearing this, Ghost Yanchang's old face darkened, and then a ghastly light shot out from his tiger-like eyes. It is indeed beyond my imagination that you can use black coffin. However, with the previous lesson, I have now strengthened my body to the limit. Even if you use black coffin again, it will be useless. Ghost Yanqing said solemnly. He raised his arrogant head, and his arrogant laughter resounded through the sky. If you want to hurt me with just the path of ghost, you have to use at least Hado number 96, one-blade cremation. That is a forbidden art that uses burning the body as a medium. Dustless said to himself. He had seen and remembered the one-blade cremation used by Rokush boxer Nishi. Its power was shockingly strong. But, thank you for your reminder this time. You are really a qualified strategist, always giving me advice when I have a headache. Captain Ghost Yanqing, next year at this time, I will definitely go to your grave to burn incense and pay my respects to you. Dustless chuckled. His tone was exceptionally high and full of gratitude. His whole body was filled with blazing spiritual pressure, almost exactly the same as Rokush boxer Nishi's. Are you kidding me? How can you know a forbidden art like one-blade cremation? You have only been a death god for half a year. How can you know such a forbidden art? Saber 8 Ghost Yanqing exclaimed in shock, his eyeballs almost falling out of their sockets. Hearing that, Wuchen remained unmoved. With a gentle smile on his face, he said calmly, since you said that cremation with one saber can defeat you, let's do as you say. The chakra condensed in his body was extremely hot. Its power and range were even greater than Rokush boxer Nishi's. Path of Hado number 96, one-blade cremation. The ground was instantly dyed a fiery red, refracting a dangerous halo. Then, with a bang, a huge crimson blade instantly swallowed Ghost Yanchang's kenpachi. Bang, bang, bang. Before he could even scream, Ghost Yanqing's soul was destroyed. He was burned to ashes with a single slash, and a figure fell from the sky. It was Ghost Yanqing's charred body, and he could not be more dead. The insides of his body had been hollowed out. Boom, boom, boom. After a long while, the blade exploded, producing a blazing storm. Dustless, who was caught off guard, was also forced to retreat. Even if he was thousands of meters away from the center, he could still feel the unparalleled impact. This forbidden art is really strong. Seeing such exaggerated destruction, Dustless nodded with satisfaction. He immediately looked at his charred left arm and couldn't help but shake his head. If he didn't have the body of the ten-tailed beast, he wouldn't have dared to use such a trick. It was equivalent to sacrificing 800 to kill 1,000 enemies. This is, just as Dustless was about to clean up Ghost Yen Qing and return to Soul Society with Rokush Boxer Nishi's body to take credit, a few strange spiritual pressures came. They were not great void or death gods, but they were very powerful. Hearing this, Busby retracted his foot and turned around in confusion. He's just an ant that's spouting nonsense and only knows how to clamor. What's so good about him? Bang! The first thing he saw when he turned his head was a golden calf. Busby didn't even see the sneak attacker's figure clearly before he was sent flying by the explosive little foot. Boom! 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 Caught off guard, Busby was instantly heavily injured and spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't resist the powerful force and could only go with the flow and resign himself to fate. He looked at his chest in disbelief. The skin there was permanently necrotic, and there were also sunken footprints. Bastard, you dare to lie to me. Candace flew into a rage out of humiliation. High-density lightning flashed all over her body, and she glared at the indifferent Dustless. This is outrageous. How dare you trick me? And you even acted so well. Thinking of how she foolishly revealed the secret of Quincy to Dustless, Candace flew into a rage. Her delicate body trembled, and the two majestic peaks in front of her chest swayed back and forth, dazzling the eyes. She swallowed her saliva. I do need to thank you, Dustless said sincerely. If it weren't for Candace telling him everything, he would still be in the dark. But now we're even. With your posture full of flaws, I can kill you dozens of times. His calm tone was like an ancient well as he recounted a trivial matter. You mean, you're very fast? Candace sneered, and a large number of spiritual particles condensed under her feet in an instant. Dustless didn't answer but just looked at her indifferently. Obviously, that was what he meant. Arrogant, Philian kick. Candace suddenly disappeared from his sight, and her breath disappeared without a trace. Dustless's pupils dilated as he looked for traces of Candace. Dustless looked around for a long time, but still failed to find any trace of Candace. He shook his head and gave up. Boy, what do you mean? After a while, a puzzled voice came from behind. Dustless was slightly startled and immediately turned his head. Candace was very close, only a thumb's length away from Dustless's face. Dustless could smell her elegant body fragrance with a light sniff. Candace could have launched a sneak attack, but her deep doubts made her hold back the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There was no other reason than Dustless's reaction was too unusual. She didn't hide her breath, and even a beginner death god could detect her presence. However, Dustless looked like he didn't know anything. It was hard to imagine that he could severely injure Dustless just now. There was a world of difference between his reaction before and after. Now, Dustless was like a rookie. There's nothing strange about it. Dustless's clear eyes saw through Candace's thoughts. He said indifferently, because there's no need. Any of your attacks are useless. No matter what kind of tricks you use, they won't work on me. I don't need to feel your trace. Just come at me if you can. I'm standing right here. Anyway, you can't hit me. This truth was like a thorn that stabbed Candace's self-esteem. I'm standing right here. Anyway, you can't hit me. How arrogant. He didn't take her and Dustless seriously at all. Chapter 979. Candace was furious and rubbed her eyes. Dustless was still bowing and groveling just a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye, he had become so arrogant. She couldn't get used to the difference between before and after. "If you're not going to do it, I'm going to." A cold voice rang in her ears. Then, Dustless's body turned tangible and intangible, and he disappeared without a trace. So fast. Seeing this, Candace was greatly alarmed. She could see a straight beam of light shooting towards Busby's direction. Candace's ability was thunder. Not only did she have the speed of lightning, but she also had the power of lightning. Dustless had instead aroused her competitive spirit. Paw paw paw. Dazzling lightning jumped all over her body, and she turned into a silver light that rushed toward Dustless. Holy annihilation arrow. The lightning pierced through Dustless, but its effect was minimal. It couldn't hurt Dustless at all. What made Candace angry was that Dustless didn't even look at her from the beginning to the end. He completely ignored her as if she was a nobody. "You bastard, I'll kill you." Busby's face twisted ferociously. A huge blazing flame condensed on his finger. Burning finger too. Bang! The flame dragon was extremely ferocious. It instantly shattered Dustless. Different from before, the burning finger this time was obviously several times stronger. When the flame destroyed Dustless, it also produced an extremely strong flame explosion that dissipated all the photons on Dustless's body. The fingernail-sized flame was extremely powerful. The tyrannical destruction it produced was definitely not inferior to Tao Breaker number 90. Strange. What's wrong with this group of Quinites? The soaring flame was extremely hot. The flame explosion revolved around Dustless's body, but it was obviously different from the elemental transformation just now. His whole body turned intangible. Dustless didn't hesitate to use divine might. The extraordinary flame could even burn photons. Something doesn't seem right. It seems like there are quite a few people in this world who can hit my elemental form. Could it be that my elemental form also changed when I changed into my soul state? Dustless muttered to himself, completely ignoring the flames around him. First, there was Yanqing Kenpachi, and then there was Busby. It was too much of a coincidence. Even Candace had more or less played a role, but it was not as effective as Busby's. Ghost Yan Chang's Kenpachi can touch elementization because of Zanpakuto's ability. But these two quinces don't understand hockey, or elementization doesn't work on quinces. Dustless tried to figure it out, but he couldn't figure it out for a long time. Soon after, he felt relieved. Even if his elemental transformation really failed, it still couldn't make up for the gap between them. Moreover, he wasn't someone who relied on elemental transformation, not to mention he still had God's might. Humph. You're dead for sure. Waving his hand, Bazabi shook off the dust on his body and looked at his bumpy chest. His eyes were filled with gloominess. Brat, you died quickly. Otherwise, what will happen? A gust of cold air blew by his ear, and Bazabi was shocked. He turned his head reflexively and saw that Dustless was unscathed, and he was holding a golden greatsword in his hand. Bazabi's expression turned serious as he sensed the murderous intent boiling all over Dustless's body. His right foot suddenly stomped on the ground, and his unique domain spread out. Armor shell calming armor. A circular protective shield with lines spread out, forming an absolute domain. Anyone who tried to get close to Bazabi would be eroded. What's the use of this thing? With contempt in his eyes, Dustless grabbed the line defense in front of him with one hand. Its effect was similar to Shinra Tensei. Idiot, you dare to grab the armor shell calming armor with your hand. This is completely different from ordinary armor shell calming armor. Not only can it defend against the enemy, but it can also erode the enemy. Bazabi sneered in his heart. He was speechless at Dustless's ignorance and stupidity. Pfft. A crisp sound was heard, and Bazabi was stunned. He looked at Dustless, and his mocking smile stopped. Looking at Dustless, who had invaded the armor shell calming armor, unscathed, Bazabi's eyes became extremely dim as if his soul had been sucked away. His hand. How did he do that? Candace looked at Dustless's big black hand and said in disbelief. That big hand that flashed with a deep black edge completely ignored the existence of the armor shell calming armor, and easily tore it apart. You two have always been the first to attack. This time, it's time for someone else to attack. A cold glint appeared in his hawk-like eyes. Bazabi and Candace, who were being stared at, felt as if their souls were trembling. They both felt as if there was a blade on their backs. They pointed at the void and gathered all the spiritual pressure in their bodies. Tao Breaker 9, they thought that they would be greeted with the ultimate attack of 5 thunders, but who would have thought that Dustless's fierce attack would suddenly stop? He instantly settled the matter and relaxed his raised finger. After looking at Dustless seriously for a while, Bazabi's tense nerves relaxed. He sneered in a strange manner and said, "You're just putting on an act. You want to fight us without your spiritual pressure." Candace also had a light smile on her face as she looked at Dustless mockingly. Indeed. I don't have much spiritual pressure left. Although chakra has unlimited spiritual pressure, it's far from enough. I've used more than 90% of my spiritual pressure in the previous battles. Dustless couldn't deny it and muttered to himself. Hee hee. Kid, you're going to be in big trouble this time, Candace said with a smile. Candace beamed with exultation. She rolled up her sleeves, intending to teach Wuchen a lesson with an arrogant face. I'm going to be in big trouble, but I'm not the one who needs to worry. Dustless nodded in agreement. Another mysterious energy surged in his body. You're the ones who are going to be in big trouble. I've only been a Shinigami trainee for more than half a year. I don't even have a Zanpakuto yet. In fact, I'm better at chakra. Shinigami was Dustless's secondary profession. Ninja was his main profession. Compared to the former, Dustless was better at the latter. Chapter 980. Hearing this, the two of them looked at each other. Their first reaction was to think that this was nonsense. Bring it on. Noticing that Dustless's spiritual pressure had decreased, Busby was full of confidence. He hooked his finger at Dustless provocatively. Since you want to die so much, I'll grant you your wish. His deep pupils changed rapidly. The chakra in Dustless's body surged. Compared to the weak spiritual pressure, it was on a completely different level. It was vast and boundless. What a terrifying gaze. What kind of eyes are those? Busby's proud expression froze and became slightly gloomy. Dustless's eyes turned into blood-red pentagrams. Being stared at, Busby trembled uncontrollably. His hair stood on end, and cold sweat poured down. Bastard, I'm actually afraid of a death god without spiritual pressure. As if he had been humiliated, Busby cursed in his heart. The murderous intent in his eyes deepened. His body was like a black hole that gathered a large amount of spiritual droplets. It was boundless. The death god needed time to accumulate spiritual pressure, while the void needed to devour. The annihilator only needed to collect the spiritual droplets in the air. It went without saying who had the advantage. The spiritual droplets had reached a bottleneck. Busby's back was burning with flames like a god of fire. He pointed his finger at Dustless and was about to launch his strongest attack to destroy Dustless. Suddenly, a heart-wrenching pain came from his right hand that he was proud of. He saw a strange black flame burning on it. Heavenly reflection. As Dustless's voice fell, the originally weak flame became 100 times bigger and extended rapidly, trying to pull Busby into the flame. It It hurts. Pain appeared on Busby's face. He even fell to the ground and rolled because of the excessive pain. He tried everything to extinguish the flame, but the effect was minimal. Even the things that touched the black flame were instantly ignited. "Don't touch Busby. I'll help you." Hearing Busby scream, Candace's gem-like green pupils flashed with pity. Although she was cruel to her enemies, they were still on the same side. The white and tender lotus arms condensed electric light. Just as she was about to reach out to help Busby, Dustless's indifferent voice sounded. "No one can extinguish Amaterasu. Other than me, anyone who touches it will be affected." Dustless's words stopped Candace in her tracks. He said coldly, "You have to pay the price for everything you do. After attacking me, you want to leave unscathed. There's nothing so cheap in this world. As long as I kill you, this black flame will extinguish itself." However, Candace didn't appreciate his kindness. Her murderous aura surged. Her hands absorbed a large amount of high-density spirit particles, and a shining longbow appeared in her hands. Several sharp arrows were shot out of the bowstring towards Dustless. Looking up at Candace in the void and the falling thunderblade, Dustless's expression gradually became cold, and chakra, full of vitality, danced in his body. Then red logs fell from the sky. There were so many of them that they couldn't be seen clearly. They only knew that there were a lot of them. Spiritual Method, Bright God Gate. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.